Guarda come la fuma!
Made with a pistachio sauce, with the bologna, stracciatella cheese, and the chopped pistachio on top. It's a pork belly.
Duya.
Handful wad of meat goes on. The arugula, drizzle of olive oil.
And there you go.
Hello there, welcome back to another episode of Anything with Alvin. Today we're going to be recreating our version of Italy's most famous sandwich. This focaccia-like sandwich that is filled to the brim with toppings is what is known as schiacciata ripiena, and I've always wanted to try, so I thought it would be fun to make this at home. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but the shop in question is called All'Antico Vinaio, which has many of these sandwiches on their menu. We're going to be recreating two of them today, one of which includes porchetta. If you're curious how to make porchetta from scratch, you can definitely watch Andrew's video on it, but we have one directly from the butcher that is all freshly made just for us. So this is going to go in the oven while we get everything else ready to go. Alright, to begin making these sandwiches, first we must make the bread. We're going to start by making what's called the poolish, or kind of a starter-like situation with 2 cups of bread flour, 1 cup of lukewarm water, and 1/2 teaspoon of instant yeast. Mixing together until it's relatively sticky, and then setting aside for just a little bit so it can kind of combine. We're going to mix all those things together into a bowl and cover with plastic wrap and refrigerate for at least 12 hours, but no more than 48 hours. Once the poolish has been rested, we're going to go ahead and put that into a mixing bowl along with some lukewarm water, mixing it with a wooden spoon, trying to sort of incorporates this until this becomes sort of a slurry batter. Then we're going to go in and add the rest of our dough ingredients. 1/2 cup of olive oil, 6 cups of bread flour, 1 1/2 tablespoons of kosher salt. Once the dough has combined into a shaggy-like ball, we're going to cover this and allow this to rest for 20 to 30 more minutes. The dough is going to take some time, which is why we're going to alternate making a couple things while we manage the dough. The first of which will be the induja cream that they use to spread on the bottom of the inferno sandwich, or the porchetta sandwich. We're going to take 1 pound of induja, which is kind of like a spicy, fatty sausage spread-like mixture, and we're going to combine that with 16 ounces of mascarpone cheese. Combining those two together until the color has become beautiful and the spread is nice and creamy and spicy. Should be really good on a sandwich. Now back with the dough. We're going to go ahead and basically pull one of the edges of the dough, wiggle it slightly to give it some elasticity, and throw it onto the opposite side of the bowl, kind of flipping the dough one flap at a time instead of having the whole thing. This way we're allowing the dough to sort of elasticate, I don't even know if that's a word, become more elastic rather than having to knead it by hand, because this is a rather high hydration dough and it's a little bit easier to do it this way. Then it goes again to rest for another 20 to 30 minutes. Another component that seems to go on the inferno sandwich is a mix of grilled vegetables, mostly zucchini from what we have researched. So we're going to take a couple of zucchini and just cut them into nice long spears. Go ahead and oil up a nice cast iron grill and grill those zucchini spears until we have nice grill marks on all sides. Now for the marinade, this is pretty simple, just 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar, salt and pepper, a pinch of each, a teaspoon of red pepper flakes, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and 1 tablespoon of sugar. Mix that together, give it a taste, make any tiny adjustments, and throw all those zucchini bits in there to make sure that all that gets nice and absorbed. Let that sit aside until it is nice and cool. Once again, we bring out our dough, take a flap, take a wiggle, slap it towards the other side, and do that in a 360-degree pattern until it is now ready to just rest for it again for another 30 minutes. Now our porchetta has been in the oven for about an hour or so, alternating between 425 degrees to get a sear and about 300 degrees to cook it through, and it's looking nice, crispy, and perfectly delicious. This is just going to go rest until it has become room temperature or almost even refrigerated, because we do need to slice it relatively thin later on. Now we bring back the dough again, wiggle, flap, slap, wiggle, flap, slap. Yeah, just keep doing that until the dough is starting to get a little bit more elastic every single time. Alright, well now we're going to make another component for the other sandwich, La Paradiso, which has a pistachio pesto looking mixture from what we've gathered. So in the spirit of making things delicious, I'm going to attempt making pesto by hand with the mortar and pestle, because I believe that's how it's traditionally made. We're going to throw a couple of garlic cloves inside with some salt and kind of mash that up until it becomes like a sticky garlic paste situation. Once it's all nice and emulsified, we're going to go ahead and add 3 whole entire cups of basil leaves, pounding and bruising and smashing until it has become a nice mixture. I'm going to do this in additions because it's hard to fit 3 cups of basil leaves all in at the same time, but after a lot of work, a lot of smashing, pounding, grinding, mortar and pestling, we have a really good smelling pesto situation. And instead of pine nuts like a traditional pesto, we're going to go ahead and add in 1/3 cup of salted pistachios, which are going to give the same crush, grind, and mix treatment. Then we're going to go ahead and hit this with 1/3 cup of grated Parmesan cheese and mix that right right in. To emulsify this and give it that body it needs, we're going to go ahead and mix in half a cup of olive oil until this is now looking very pesto-like. Any adjustment with salt is made for the final touch, and we now will set this aside. Now that our dough is ready, we're going to go ahead and grease 2 sheet trays with some olive oil and plop our dough hopefully evenly on both sides. After realizing that we actually didn't make enough dough for 2 entire trays, I decided to combine them into one big tray instead of 2 smaller weird looking breads. So now we have 1 sheet of this bread that we're going to go ahead and let proof right before we bake it in the oven. After the dough has proof, we're going to sprinkle a little bit of sea salt on top and give this a healthy drizzle of olive oil. Then into the oven at 450 degrees for about 20 to 25 minutes. While the bread is baking, we're going to take our cooled porchetta and try to slice them into relatively thin slices. I don't really have a meat slicer, so I'm going to do this by hand with a knife, and I can't really get it that razor sharp thin you might get at a deli counter, but I think these slices would have some nice texture, plus you get some good bit of skin in there, which is pretty cool. I think this looks delicious. Now the other major component in La Paradiso sandwich is stracciatella, which I believe is the inside creamy part that you might find in burrata. This is usually made with mozzarella shreds and cream. That's usually how they make burrata. We couldn't find that specifically at the store, so we're just going to make that instead by taking actual burrata balls, tearing it open, squeezing out the stracciatella, and taking the remaining shell of the burrata, tearing that up, and mixing in some cream until we basically have the exact same thing. This stuff is pretty good. Honestly, for a dough that I've never made before, I'm pretty surprised at how well this turned out so far. Now, just like they do at the store, we're going to cut this horizontally in half to assemble our sandwich. Instead of doing individual size sandwiches, I thought it would be fun to make one giant sandwich with both flavors and then just cut it into their own slices. So for one half, we're going to start by spreading down the andouille cream. The Inferno side also gets the marinated zucchini right on top of the andouille cream. One half is for the Inferno, the other is for La Paradiso, which is going to get pesto on that side. Now on top of the zucchinis for the La Inferno sandwich, we're going to put the porchetta down in pretty thick slices. I'm being extremely generous here because, well, I like when sandwiches have a lot of toppings. And then for the meat on the Paradiso side, we're going to go ahead and put in mountains and blankets of mortadella. Definitely going for a lot more volume here than maybe a traditional sandwich shop would, but again, it's pretty thin and I think this is just going to be extra delicious. The last component on the porchetta side of the sandwich is just a nice helpful helping of arugula. And then for the mortadella side, we're going to spoon over that stracciatella we made earlier and sprinkle some crushed pistachios right on top. And well, those toppings are done. So we're going to go ahead and take the top half of our bread and put that right on top, like a giant sandwich cover. Now I think this is pretty cool. Not exactly how they might do it in the shop, but this way, not only if we slice it up do we get both flavors of the sandwich, but there's going to be 2 really cool slices in the center that actually have both flavors of the sandwiches, which is what I'm personally most excited for. I think the cross sections are looking pretty promising, a lot of layers, a lot of components, and very, very delicious looking. Let's go ahead and give this a try. Oh, these sandwiches are good. I'm really surprised by how crispy and crunchy and fluffy our bread was, and the toppings really do make a huge difference, and you can taste every single one of them. Inferno sandwich is very meaty, spicy, nice pop from the zucchini helps balance everything out, and the Paradiso sandwich is super creamy, cold, nutty, and just super delicious with the mortadella, and the pesto just comes in really nicely. Now there's a lot of sandwich here, so we definitely have to make sure that we get the opinion of the team, and even though you can't hear them, everybody's also nodding their heads a lot in either agreement or just how good the sandwiches are, and let's just say it was good enough to warrant that everybody wanted a piece to take home, which we definitely were happy to do. Now, fun fact, there's actually a few of these sandwich shops from Florence in New York City. They've opened up a couple stores, so we decided to go visit just to see what it would be like. So we went to one of the shops on a separate day, found the sandwiches that we created. There they are right there, and there's a lot of other sandwiches that are on the menu. And just for the sake of research and because we had many people waiting for us in the office, we ordered 7 total sandwiches, including the 2 we had recreated ourselves. Now with the loot in hand, it is now time to return to the studio and to see how we did. Upon inspection, these sandwiches we got from the shop were a little bit thinner compared to the ones that we made, which is that giant version. It was correct, I did overload a bunch of toppings in our sandwiches, but I think that made ours extra delicious. So let's give theirs a taste. So in La Paradiso sandwich, they actually don't use a pistachio pesto. They use more of a pistachio peanut butter like mix, like a pistachio cream. So there wasn't that basil flavor in their version. After trying a good amount of all the sandwiches that we had, including the 2 that we had created, I think I really preferred the version that we made more. I think we were able to have the luxury of baking fresh bread and eating it instantly on the spot rather than having to serve hundreds of customers. We definitely probably added 3 times the amount of toppings. And I know this is supposed to be a portable sandwich that you might walk around eating in Italy. Ours is a little less practical to be eaten and walking on the street. All in all, I think everybody on the team was able to try some. We all unanimously agreed that we prefer the version that we made, probably because we put so many good things in it. But nevertheless, there was still a lot of sandwiches for everybody else to take home that day. So we're going to be eating these for quite some time.